The conference room on Earth's orbital station was cold and sterile. Dae-hyun Kim sat quietly in his chair, listening to the officials argue about his future. He was 34 years old, average height, with dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything without drawing attention to themselves. "This is madness," Ambassador Haewon Park said, slamming her hand on the table. "We're talking about sending a human to marry an alien queen, a queen who could crush our planet with a single command." The Earth Defense Minister shook his head. "We don't have a choice. The Acheron Empire made their requirements clear. They want someone ordinary, someone unremarkable, someone who proves that humanity knows its place in the galaxy." Dae-hyun remained silent. He had learned long ago that silence often revealed more than words. "And you think Dae-hyun fits that description?" Haewon asked, looking at him with concern in her eyes. She had been his mentor for 3 years, teaching him the subtle art of diplomacy. "His file is perfect," another official said. "Mid-level scores in school, no military background, a quiet career in cultural studies. He's exactly what they asked for." What they didn't say was that Dae-hyun's real file was locked behind 7 layers of military encryption. What they didn't mention was that his quiet career had been carefully constructed as a cover story. But Dae-hyun kept these thoughts to himself, his face showing only polite attention. "I'll do it," he said simply. "If Earth needs this alliance, I'll marry the Queen." 3 weeks later, Dae-hyun stood in the grandest hall he had ever seen. The Acheron Palace was carved from a single mountain, its walls gleaming with minerals that didn't exist on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species filled the space, their strange forms and colors creating a sea of the exotic and unknown. The gravity here was heavy, almost twice what Dae-hyun was used to on Earth. Other humans in the delegation wore special support suits to help them walk, but Dae-hyun had politely refused the suit, claiming he wanted to experience the culture fully. Now he stood straight and steady while other humans around him struggled with the weight. "The Queen approaches," someone announced in a booming voice. Queen Valera entered the hall, and Dae-hyun understood immediately why her empire controlled 40 star systems. She was 7 feet tall, her skin a deep blue-gray that seemed to shimmer in the light. She had 4 arms, each muscled and powerful, moving with a grace that spoke of perfect control. Her eyes were golden, sharp as blades, and they swept across the crowd with the gaze of someone who had commanded armies. She looked at Dae-hyun for exactly 3 seconds. Then she looked away, as if he was barely worth noticing. The ceremony began. An ancient Acheron priest spoke words in a language that made Dae-hyun's translator, Chip, struggle to keep up. He spoke about duty, honor, and the joining of 2 worlds. He did not speak about love. Everyone understood this was politics, not romance. Dae-hyun said his vows in perfectly accented Acheron language. He had spent the 3 weeks learning not just the words, but the subtle tones and rhythms that gave them meaning. Several aliens in the crowd shifted in surprise. It was rare for humans to speak their language so well. Valera's golden eyes flickered to him again, this time with the smallest hint of interest. She spoke her own vows in a voice that could command armies or whisper secrets. Then she placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder, the traditional Acheron gesture of accepting a consort. Her hand was heavy with strength that could break stone. But Dae-hyun didn't flinch, didn't shift, didn't show any sign of discomfort. He simply looked up at her and smiled a small, genuine smile. The celebration that followed was overwhelming. Aliens from across the galaxy came to offer congratulations that felt more like subtle insults. A reptilian ambassador told Dae-hyun that humans were charmingly weak and should be protected like children. A crystalline being suggested that Earth should be grateful for the Queen's charity in accepting such a primitive mate. Through it all, Dae-hyun remained polite and calm. He thanked each insult as if it were a compliment. He bowed to creatures that looked at him like he was a pet. And he never once let his smile slip or his composure crack. Valira watched him from her throne, one hand holding a cup of ceremonial wine. Her closest advisor, War Mistress Kira, leaned close and whispered, "My queen, the other rulers are laughing at you. A human consort makes you look weak." "Let them laugh," Valira said, her voice cold and certain. "This marriage is a formality. The human will live in the palace and smile at ceremonies. He will change nothing. Earth gets its alliance, and we get a symbolic tie to keep them compliant. Everyone wins." But even as she spoke, something bothered her, something she couldn't quite name. The celebration went on for hours. Music played, strange and beautiful. Food was served that Dae-hyun had never imagined could exist. Aliens danced in ways that defied physics. And through it all, Dae-hyun stood or sat or walked, always appropriate, always polite, always perfectly calm. That was what bothered Valira. She had exceptional hearing, one of many advantages her species possessed. She could hear heartbeats from across a room. And all night, through insults and crowds and overwhelming strangeness, Dae-hyun's heartbeat had remained absolutely steady. Not fast with stress, not slow with artificial calm. Just perfectly, impossibly controlled. As the celebration finally ended and guests began to leave, Valira stood from her throne. She walked to where Dae-hyun stood, looking out a massive window at the alien stars beyond. "You seem very calm for someone whose life just changed completely," she said. Dae-hyun turned to her and gave that same small smile. "I adapt well, Your Majesty." "Don't call me that," she said, with a hint of irritation. "You're my consort now, even if it's just a title. Call me Valira." "As you wish, Valira." She studied him with those golden eyes, trying to understand what she was seeing. He was so ordinary in appearance, average height for a human, normal build, nothing special about his face or his stance, and yet something felt wrong. Something felt like a piece that didn't fit the puzzle. "Tomorrow, you will be shown to your quarters in the palace," she said. "You will have servants and access to most areas. But understand this clearly. You are here as a symbol, nothing more. I don't need a human husband. I don't want advice or companionship from someone whose species just learned to cross stars while mine has ruled them for millennia. Stay out of my way, and we will have no problems." "I understand," Dae-hyun said simply. Valira turned to leave, but paused. "One question. The gravity here is nearly twice Earth's. Other humans in your delegation can barely walk without assistance. Why are you standing so easily?" Dae-hyun's smile never changed. "I trained myself before coming. I wanted to be prepared." It was a reasonable answer, a simple answer. But Valira's instincts, honed through years of war and politics, whispered that it was also a lie. Not completely false, but not completely true either. She left without saying more, her 4 arms moving in the elegant patterns of Acheron royalty. Behind her, Dae-hyun remained at the window, looking out at stars that were now his home. If anyone had been watching closely, they might have noticed that his calm expression finally changed. Just for a moment, something deeper showed in his eyes. Something ancient and dangerous and perfectly controlled. Then it was gone, and he was just an ordinary human again, a simple diplomat. Nothing special, nothing to fear. He smiled at his reflection in the window. The game had begun. 3 months passed like water flowing through Dae-hyun's fingers. He lived in the palace now in rooms that were too large and too cold for human comfort, but he never complained. Complaining would draw attention, and attention was something he carefully controlled. The palace was a city unto itself, carved deep into the mountain. Acheron warriors trained in courtyards where the air was thin and the gravity was crushing. Servants moved through halls wide enough to drive vehicles through. And somewhere in the highest tower, Queen Valera ruled her empire, making decisions that affected billions of lives. She barely spoke to Dae-hyun. Sometimes days would pass without him seeing her at all. When they did cross paths, she would nod politely and continue walking, her 4 arms carrying data tablets and weapons with equal ease. He was furniture to her, a piece of political decoration. This suited Dae-hyun perfectly. He spent his days in the palace archives, a massive library that stretched across 3 floors. Ancient books and modern data crystals held the history of the Acheron people. Dae-hyun read everything he could find. He learned about their wars, their culture, their philosophy. He studied their military tactics and their poetry with equal attention. The head librarian, an elderly Acheron named Corthan, found him fascinating. "Most visitors come here for an hour and leave bored," Corthan said one day. "You come every day and read for 8 hours. Why?" "I want to understand," Dae-hyun said simply. "If I live here, I should know the people." "You're strange for a human," Corthan observed. Dae-hyun just smiled and returned to his reading. What others didn't notice was how Dae-hyun moved through the palace. The gravity that made human visitors gasp and struggle seemed to barely affect him. He climbed stairs without breathing hard. He walked long distances without tiring. When servants saw him moving through the heavy gravity like it was nothing, they whispered among themselves, but Dae-hyun always had an explanation ready. "I'm getting used to it," he would say with a modest smile. "Humans adapt quickly," he would claim when pressed. The truth was far more complicated, but Dae-hyun kept that truth locked behind the same calm expression he showed the world. On the 93rd day of his marriage, everything began to change. A state dinner was being held to welcome ambassadors from across the galaxy. Valera required Dae-hyun to attend as her consort. He dressed in formal clothes that mixed human and Acheron styles, looking like exactly what he was supposed to be, a human trying to fit into an alien world. The dinner was held in a hall with a ceiling painted to show the Acheron homestar. Hundreds of aliens sat at a table that curved in a massive circle. Dae-hyun sat beside Valera, quiet and unnoticed, while she discussed military treaties and trade agreements. Then the ambassador from the Kryn Dominion arrived. The Kryn were a warrior species, smaller than Acherons, but known for their cruelty and cunning. Ambassador Rix had scales like black metal and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. He walked directly to Valera and bowed, but the bow was calculated to be just barely respectful enough to avoid open insult. "Queen Valera," he said in a voice like grinding stones, "I see you've brought your pet human to dinner. How charming. Tell me, does he do tricks?" The room went silent. Several ambassadors leaned forward, eager to see how Valera would respond to this challenge. Insult a ruler's consort, and you insult the ruler themselves. Before Valera could speak, Dae-hyun stood up. He moved with calm precision, his face showing only polite interest. "Ambassador Rix," he said in perfect Kryn language, "I appreciate your concern for my abilities. In the interest of cultural exchange, perhaps I should demonstrate my knowledge of proper diplomatic protocol." Rix's eyes narrowed. "What are you babbling about, human?" Dae-hyun continued speaking in Kryn, his voice steady and clear. "In traditional Kryn custom, when addressing a monarch of equal or greater power, one must perform the bow of 7 positions. You performed only 4. This is acceptable when addressing a lesser ruler, but Queen Valera's empire controls 40 systems to your dominion's 12. By your own cultural standards, you have just publicly declared her inferior." The room became even quieter. Rix's scales seemed to darken with anger. But Dae-hyun wasn't finished. He switched to Acheron language. In Acheron tradition, insulting a consort is equivalent to challenging the monarch's judgment in choosing them. To make such a challenge without formal declaration is considered cowardice. Then he spoke in the trading tongue that most species understood. And in general galactic protocol, which I believe we all agreed to follow at these dinners, personal attacks on any attendee's species or status result in immediate ejection from the proceedings. He looked at Rix with that same calm smile. So, Ambassador, you have three choices. You can apologize and perform the proper Kryn bow. You can formally challenge Queen Valira's judgment, which would require you to face her war mistress in combat, or you can be removed from this dinner in front of everyone. Which would you prefer? Every eye in the room turned to Rix. The Kryn ambassador's face twisted with rage, but he was trapped. Everything Dae-hyun said was absolutely correct. The protocols were ancient and binding. Finally, Rix bowed, properly this time, all 7 positions. My apologies, Queen Valira, and to you, Consort Kim, I spoke in haste. Dae-hyun nodded graciously and sat back down. The dinner continued, but now conversations buzzed with new energy. The human consort had just demonstrated mastery of diplomatic protocols from 3 different civilizations. That was not ordinary. That was not simple. Valira leaned close to Dae-hyun, her voice low. How do you know Kryn customs? I read about them, he said simply. In 3 months, you learned enough to quote specific protocols? I read quickly. She studied him for a long moment, those golden eyes searching for something. Then she turned back to the dinner, but her mind was working. This human was more than he appeared, much more. After the dinner, as Dae-hyun walked back toward his quarters, someone called his name. He turned to find Ji-woo Lee, another human who had arrived with Earth's embassy staff. She was young, smart, and ambitious. That was impressive, Ji-woo said, falling into step beside him. Almost too impressive. I just did what was necessary, Dae-hyun replied. You speak 5 languages fluently. You know diplomatic protocols that take ambassadors years to learn. You move through this gravity like you were born here. She stopped walking and faced him. I've seen your official file, Dae-hyun. It says you're average, unremarkable, but everything I've watched you do is extraordinary. Dae-hyun's expression didn't change. I work hard. I study. I tried to look deeper into your background, Ji-woo continued, before your diplomatic career. But those records are sealed, military classification, the highest level. Many records are classified, Dae-hyun said calmly. Ji-woo stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Who are you really? What did you do before this? For just a moment, something shifted behind Dae-hyun's eyes, something cold and dangerous that had seen things Ji-woo couldn't imagine. Then it was gone, replaced by the same gentle calm. I used to have a different job, he said quietly. That's all you need to know. Trust me, Ji-woo. I'm here to help Earth, not hurt it. How can I trust you when I don't know what you are? Because I'm asking you to. He smiled, and this time there was real warmth in it. We're both far from home. We both want what's best for humanity. Let that be enough. Ji-woo wanted to argue, but something in his voice made her pause. Finally, she nodded. I'll trust you, for now. But if you're hiding something that could hurt our people... I'm not, Dae-hyun said firmly. I promise you that. She left, and Dae-hyun continued to his quarters. But he knew the situation was changing. People were starting to notice, starting to question. That night, as he prepared for sleep, his communicator chimed. It was a message from Valira's office, a summons for the morning. When he arrived at the Queen's private study the next day, she was waiting. Her 4 arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. I had my intelligence network run a deep search on you, she said without preamble. Do you know what they found? I can guess, Dae-hyun replied. Your entire history before 5 years ago is sealed. Military encryption. The highest level Earth has. Even I, as an allied head of state, cannot access it. She walked closer, towering over him. So I'm going to ask you directly, and I want the truth. Who are you, Dae-hyun Kim? He looked up at her, meeting those golden eyes without fear. I told you on our wedding night, I'm someone who adapts well. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. Valira's frustration was clear. She could command armies, destroy planets, reshape civilizations. But she couldn't force this small human to reveal his secrets. Fine, she said finally. Keep your mysteries, but understand this. I'm watching you now. Really watching. And if I discover you're a threat to my empire, I'm not, Dae-hyun interrupted gently. I swear to you, Valira, I mean no harm to you or your people. She wanted to believe him. Against all logic, something in his voice made her want to trust this strange, impossible human. But trust was dangerous. Trust could destroy empires. Get out, she said. Dae-hyun bowed and left, but as he walked through the palace halls, he knew the truth. His cover was cracking. Soon, very soon, he would have to decide how much to reveal and when. The game was becoming more complex. And somewhere in the palace, Queen Valira sat at her desk, staring at the sealed files on her screen, wondering what secrets her human husband was hiding. The convergence point station floated in neutral space, a massive wheel of metal and light where leaders from across the galaxy gathered to discuss peace. It was also, Dae-hyun knew, one of the most dangerous places in the universe. Put this many powerful beings in one place, and violence became inevitable. Valira had brought him along as her consort. After the dinner incident, she seemed uncertain whether to keep him close or push him away. So she did both, bringing him to the summit, but barely speaking to him during the journey. The station was impressive. Gardens from 100 worlds grew under artificial suns. Water flowed in streams that defied gravity. And everywhere, aliens of every imaginable form moved through the corridors, discussing treaties and alliances and the future of civilization. Dae-hyun walked beside Valira, quiet and observant. She wore her full royal armor, looking like the warrior queen she was. Her war mistress, Kira, followed with a dozen elite guards. They were the best of the best, chosen to protect their queen with their lives. During a reception in one of the station's great halls, Dae-hyun found himself standing near General Thorax, the commander of Valira's military. The general was massive even for an Acheron, with scars that told stories of countless battles. "You're the human consort," Thorax said, looking down at Dae-hyun with barely concealed disdain. "I am," Dae-hyun replied politely. "You know anything about warfare, human? Or do your kind just talk and run when real fighting starts?" Dae-hyun could have stayed quiet, could have smiled and walked away. But something in the general's tone reminded him of other warriors he had known, warriors who respected truth over politeness. "The third Acheron expansion," Dae-hyun said calmly. "Your forces conquered the Deltax system using a pincer movement through the asteroid field. It was brilliant. The Deltax expected a frontal assault, but you split your fleet and caught them between hammer and anvil." Thorax blinked in surprise. "You know that campaign? I've studied 17 of your major battles. The tactics you used at Deltax were similar to what the human general Yi Sun-sin did on Earth centuries ago. Different technology, same principle. Use the environment as a weapon." For the first time, Thorax looked at Dae-hyun with something other than contempt. "You study military history? When I can," Dae-hyun said. "Strategy is strategy, regardless of species. They talked for another 10 minutes, discussing tactics and battles. Thorax found himself impressed despite his prejudices. This human understood warfare in ways that most civilians never could. Across the room, Valira watched the conversation with growing confusion. Her human consort was discussing military strategy with one of the galaxy's most famous generals, and Thorax was actually listening. The reception continued. Leaders gave speeches about cooperation and peace. Dae-hyun stood quietly beside Valira, his eyes constantly scanning the room in a pattern so subtle that no one consciously noticed it. But he was counting guards, noting exits, watching for anything unusual. When he saw Admiral Woo-jin Choi enter the hall, Dae-hyun's heartbeat increased by exactly 3 beats per minute. It was the first time his pulse had changed since the wedding. The Admiral was an older human, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. He wore the dress uniform of Earth's deep space fleet. And when he saw Dae-hyun, his face went carefully blank. They didn't speak, didn't acknowledge each other. But Dae-hyun saw the Admiral's hand move in a subtle gesture, one that most people would miss. It was a signal from a language few people knew. A warning. Danger. Soon. Be ready. Dae-hyun's expression never changed, but his body began preparing. His enhanced metabolism shifted. His neural pathways opened. Systems that had been dormant for years started warming up like engines coming online. The attack came during the grand dinner. The lights went out first. Then the screaming started. Armed figures in black armor poured into the hall through breaches in the walls. They moved with military precision, targeting specific leaders. Energy weapons fired, filling the air with the smell of ozone and burning. Station security tried to respond, but the attackers had planned well. Half the guards went down in the first 10 seconds. Valira's protective detail immediately formed a shield around her, their weapons drawn. But Dae-hyun could see what they couldn't. 3 attackers were flanking through the garden area. They would reach Valira in less than 30 seconds, and her guards were looking the wrong way. Something inside Dae-hyun clicked, like a switch being thrown, like a door opening. He moved. The 2 Acheron guards nearest to Valira barely saw what happened. One moment, the human consort was standing quietly beside them. The next moment, he had their weapons in his hands, taken so smoothly that they didn't even realize they'd been disarmed until it was done. "Forgive me," Dae-hyun said quietly. Then he stepped in front of Valira. The first attacker came through the garden at full sprint. He was Kryn, designed for killing, enhanced for combat. He saw the human standing in his way and actually laughed. The laugh died when Dae-hyun shot him 3 times in the center of mass with perfect accuracy, then pivoted and put 2 rounds through the second attacker's head before the first body hit the ground. The third attacker made it close enough to swing a blade at Dae-hyun's head. Dae-hyun ducked under the swing with inhuman speed, dropped the guns, and caught the attacker's arm. What followed happened so fast that Valira's enhanced eyes could barely track it. Dae-hyun broke the attacker's elbow with a precise strike, redirected the blade into the attacker's own throat, caught the body before it fell, and used it as a shield against incoming fire from across the room. Then he retrieved the guns and returned fire, dropping 2 more attackers with shots that shouldn't have been possible from that angle. All of this took 7 seconds. War Mistress Kira stared at the human with shock written across her face. "What in the void?" But Dae-hyun wasn't done. More attackers were coming. He could hear them, smell them. His enhanced senses painted a picture of the entire battlefield that his combat-trained mind processed in milliseconds. "Kira," he said, his voice completely different now. Not the gentle diplomat. This was the voice of someone who commanded soldiers. "Take 3 guards and cover the east entrance. They'll try to flank through there next." "Who do you think you—" Kira started. "Do it now!" The authority in his voice was absolute. Kira moved without thinking, taking 3 guards and heading to the east entrance. 15 seconds later, attackers poured through exactly where Dae-hyun had predicted, and Kira was ready for them. Valira grabbed Dae-hyun's shoulder with one of her 4 hands. "What are you?" "Later," he said. "Right now, stay behind me and stay low." The battle raged for another 5 minutes. Station security finally got organized and began pushing the attackers back. But during those 5 minutes, Dae-hyun moved like nothing Valira had ever seen. He fought with a style that combined human martial arts with perfect understanding of alien physiology. Every movement was efficient. Every shot was precise. He wasted nothing. When a Kryn warrior, bigger and stronger than the others, broke through the defensive line and charged straight at Valira with a quantum blade, Dae-hyun intercepted. The Kryn had been genetically enhanced for combat, trained since birth to kill. He was everything his people had designed him to be. Dae-hyun fought him hand-to-hand and won in 17 seconds. It wasn't even close. The Kryn tried a high slash. Dae-hyun redirected it and broke the warrior's wrist. The Kryn tried a kick. Dae-hyun caught the leg and shattered the knee. The Kryn tried to headbutt him. Dae-hyun sidestepped and delivered a strike to the warrior's throat that crushed his windpipe. The body fell, and silence spread across the immediate area as everyone who had witnessed the fight tried to process what they had just seen. Then Admiral Woo Jin Choi appeared, leading a squad of Earth Marines. He looked at Dae-hyun and saluted with a fist over his heart. It was a military salute, but not one used by regular forces. "Ghost Commander," the Admiral said with deep respect. "It's good to see you again." The title meant nothing to the aliens present, but they heard the fear in the Admiral's voice. Fear mixed with awe. Station security finally declared the area secure. Medical teams rushed in. Leaders were escorted to safe locations, and Valira stood in the middle of the chaos, staring at her human husband, who was calmly returning the weapons he had borrowed to her shocked guards. "I apologize for taking your guns," Dae-hyun said to the guards politely, "but I needed them." The guards just nodded, too stunned to speak. Valira's mind was racing. She had seen combat for decades. She had fought in wars that most species only read about in history books, and she had never seen anyone fight like that human had just fought. The speed, the precision, the absolute mastery. "Everyone out," she ordered. Her guards and advisors quickly left, understanding the tone. When they were alone, she grabbed Dae-hyun and pushed him against the wall, not violently but firmly. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "Right now, no more games. What are you?" Dae-hyun looked up at her. The cold combat mask was fading, replaced by something more human, more vulnerable. "I wasn't always a diplomat, Valira," he said quietly. "Before I became your husband, I was what humanity needed me to be." "And what was that?" He met her golden eyes without flinching. "A weapon, a protector, a ghost that moved through shadows and did things that needed to be done. I was part of something Earth created when we first realized we weren't alone in the universe. Something we made to keep our species safe." "You're telling me you're some kind of soldier?" "More than a soldier. Less than human in some ways." He smiled sadly. "I'm what you get when you take someone and push them past every limit. When you enhance them, train them. Shape them into something that can stand against a galaxy that sees your species as weak." Valira's hands loosened slightly. "The marriage. You were sent to spy on me." "I was sent to be close to you," Dae-hyun admitted. "To understand you, to protect Earth's interests if necessary. But Valira..." He reached up and touched her hand. "Something changed. Over these months, watching you rule with wisdom and strength, getting to know your people, your culture, I started to care, not as an asset, as a person." She wanted to throw him across the room, wanted to rage at the deception, but she was a queen. Emotion had no place in strategic thinking. "We will discuss this further," she said coldly. "Privately, on my ship." and you will tell me everything, or this marriage ends and Earth loses its alliance. Understood? Understood, Daehyun said. But as they left the devastated hall, both knew that everything had changed. The royal quarters on Valira's flagship were silent except for the hum of engines. They were traveling back to Asheron Prime. But the journey would take 3 days. 3 days for Daehyun to explain everything, or 3 days for their marriage to crumble into nothing. Valira sat in a chair designed for her larger frame, her 4 arms crossed in a way that spoke of barely controlled anger. Daehyun stood before her, not defensive, but ready to accept whatever judgment came. "Start talking," Valira said, "and don't leave anything out." Daehyun took a breath. "When Earth first detected alien signals about 100 years ago, we realized something important. We were children playing in a universe full of adults. Some of those adults would be friendly. Others would see us as resources to exploit or threats to eliminate. So you built weapons," Valira said. "Not weapons, people. Project Threshold was designed to create individuals who could stand against any alien threat. Not armies, small teams, specialists." "Tell me how it works." Daehyun walked to the window, looking out at the stars. They started with volunteers, people who scored high in specific tests: physical ability, mental flexibility, stress tolerance. I was 22 when they recruited me. Fresh out of university, trained in languages and culture. They told me I could serve humanity in a special way. "What did they do to you?" Valira's voice was softer now, less angry, more curious. "Genetic modification first, enhanced muscle density, faster healing, improved senses. Then neural augmentation. My brain processes information differently now. Faster, more efficiently. I can learn languages in weeks that should take years. I can analyze combat situations in milliseconds." He turned to face her. "They made me stronger, faster, smarter. But they couldn't make me bigger. I'd still look human. Still seem ordinary. How many like you are there?" 12. We were the first generation. The only generation. After the project succeeded, Earth's leadership decided it was too dangerous to continue. What if we turned against them? What if other species found out and saw it as an act of war? So they shut it down, sealed the records, and gave us new identities. Valira stood and walked closer. "And what were you supposed to do? Just pretend to be normal?" "We were supposed to fade into society. Use our abilities quietly. Be ready if Earth ever needed us again." Daehyun smiled sadly. "I became a diplomat because my enhancements made me exceptionally good at reading people, understanding cultures, navigating complex social situations. Until they needed you for this marriage." "Yes." Valira's golden eyes studied him intently. "You said Earth sent you to spy on me, to protect their interests. What exactly were your orders?" This was the moment of truth. Daehyun could lie, could soften it, but he had promised honesty. "I was ordered to get close to you, learn about your empire, your military, your plans. If you ever became a threat to Earth, I was to—" He paused. "I was to neutralize that threat by any means necessary." "Meaning kill me," Valira said flatly. "If absolutely necessary, yes. But also to prevent it from ever reaching that point. To build a real alliance through understanding and trust." Valira laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Trust, while lying about everything you are." "I never lied," Daehyun said firmly. "I never claimed to be something I wasn't. I just didn't tell you everything I was." "That's the same thing." "No, it's not." He stepped closer, his voice passionate now. "Valira, listen to me. Yes, I came here with a mission. Yes, I was hiding what I am. But something happened that I didn't expect. I started to care about you. Not as a target. Not as a strategic objective. As a person." She wanted to believe him, but decades of ruling had taught her to doubt beautiful words. How can I trust anything you say? For all I know, this is just another tactic. Because I'm risking everything to tell you the truth now, Dae-hyun said. I could have kept hiding, could have maintained the illusion, but I won't do that to you. You deserve honesty. Valira turned away, her hands clenching and unclenching. In Acheron culture, we bond for life. When I accepted you as consort, it meant something to me. Even though it was political, even though I told myself it meant nothing, some part of me started to... She couldn't finish. Started to what? Dae-hyun asked gently. Started to feel something, she admitted. These months, watching you adapt to our ways, seeing you respect our culture, listening to you speak our language perfectly, I found myself looking forward to the moments we did interact. Found myself wondering what you thought about things. And now, I learn it was all part of a mission. It started that way, Dae-hyun said. But it's not that way now. Valira, I've been enhanced to be many things. A warrior, a spy, a weapon. But they couldn't enhance away my ability to feel. And what I feel for you is real. She spun to face him, all four arms spread in frustration. How do I know that? How can I ever know what's real and what's strategy with you? Dae-hyun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He placed it on the table between them. This is a direct communication link to Earth Command. It's been in my pocket since the day we met. One activation, and I could send detailed intelligence reports about you, your empire, your vulnerabilities. He picked it up and crushed it in his hand. The device sparked and died. I haven't used it once, he said. Not a single report. Not one piece of intelligence. Because somewhere between the wedding and now, my loyalty shifted. I'm not Earth's asset anymore. I'm your husband, and if that makes me a traitor to my mission, so be it. Valira stared at the broken device. Such a small thing. Such a large gesture. You destroyed your only connection to your command. I don't need it. I chose you, Valira. I choose you now. She sat down heavily, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to throw him off the ship, part of her wanted to believe him, and a smaller, more vulnerable part wanted to hold him and never let go. Tell me about the Threshold Project, she said finally. Everything. For the next 3 hours, Dae-hyun talked. He explained the science behind the enhancements, the training regimen that broke most candidates. The missions he had undertaken before his diplomatic cover, the things he had done, some heroic, some dark, all necessary. Valira listened without interrupting, her strategic mind cataloging every detail. When he finished, the silence stretched between them. You're dangerous, she said finally. Yes. If you wanted to, you could probably kill me. Probably, Dae-hyun admitted. But I would die trying to protect you instead. Why should I believe that? Because I just told you exactly how to kill me. The enhancements have weaknesses, specific neural inhibitors that can shut down my systems, certain frequencies that disrupt the genetic modifications. I just gave you every tool you would need to destroy me. He looked at her steadily. That's my trust, Valira. Absolute vulnerability. She understood. In giving her the means to kill him, he had proven he didn't intend to harm her. It was a warrior's logic, one her people understood deeply. Before she could respond, a communication alert chimed. It was Admiral Woo Jin Choi, requesting urgent contact. Valira gave permission, and the Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked worried. Your Majesty, Consort Dae-hyun, he said formally. I have urgent intelligence to share. The assassination attempt was more complex than it appeared. Explain, Valira commanded. Our analysis of the attackers' equipment and tactics suggests they were funded and coordinated by someone with access to high-level coalition resources. This wasn't just the Kryn Dominion acting alone, it was a multi-species conspiracy. Dae-hyun leaned forward. What's their objective? to destabilize the coalition by eliminating key leaders. You, Your Majesty, were a primary target. But so were the leaders of 6 other major civilizations, including Earth. The Admiral's expression grew grim. We believe this is the beginning of a coup attempt. Someone wants to reshape the galactic order. Valira's 4 hands clenched into fists. Do we know who's behind it? Not yet. But we need to coordinate our intelligence efforts. Earth and the Acheron Empire working together could uncover the conspiracy before they strike again. After the Admiral signed off, Valira and Dae-Hyun sat in heavy silence. This changes things, Valira said finally. Does it? Dae-Hyun asked. We have a common enemy now, a threat to both our peoples. She looked at him directly. I need to know you'll stand with me. Not because of some mission, but because you choose to. I already told you I choose you, Dae-Hyun said, but I understand you need more than words. Valira stood and began pacing, her military mind working. In Acheron culture, when a consort's loyalty is questioned, there's a traditional way to prove themselves. The Crucible of Ascension. You would fight 3 of my finest warriors. Win, and no one can question your place at my side. Lose, and you forfeit the right to be my consort. I'll do it, Dae-Hyun said immediately. You don't understand. These won't be ordinary soldiers. These will be champions. Warriors who have dedicated their lives to combat. And one of them... She paused. One of them will be General Thorax. He's been vocal about believing you're a threat. This is your chance to prove him wrong. Or prove him right, Dae-Hyun said with a slight smile. When do we begin? After we return to Acheron Prime. 3 days to prepare. She stepped closer, and for the first time since the attack, her voice softened. Dae-Hyun, I don't want to lose you. Despite everything, despite the lies and secrets, I don't want you to leave. He reached up and took one of her 4 hands in both of his. Then you won't. I'll win the Crucible. And then we'll face this conspiracy together. As partners. As equals, she added. As equals, he agreed. Valira looked down at their joined hands. Acheron and human. Alien and enhanced human. Queen and consort. And maybe, just maybe, something more. I need time to fully trust you again, she said quietly. I know. I'll earn it back. However long it takes. She nodded and gently pulled her hand away. Rest. Train. In 3 days, you'll face the greatest challenge of your life. As Dae-Hyun left her quarters, Valira sat alone in the darkness, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake or the best decision of her life. Time would tell. And time was running out. The grand arena of Acheron Prime was carved from black stone that had witnessed 10,000 years of combat. It could hold 500,000 spectators, and today, every seat was filled. Across 40 star systems, billions watched on screens as Queen Valira's human consort prepared to prove himself worthy. Dae-Hyun stood in the center of the arena, wearing simple combat clothes. No armor, no weapons yet, just a human who looked impossibly small against the massive architecture around him. Valira sat on her throne at the arena's edge, her face a mask of royal composure. But inside, her hearts were racing. She had spent the last 3 days thinking about Dae-Hyun's revelations, about trust and deception, and the strange feelings growing inside her. Now she could only watch and hope. War Mistress Kira approached the arena's center and raised her voice to address the crowd. Today, Consort Dae-Hyun Kim faces the Crucible of Ascension. He will battle 3 champions of the Acheron Empire. To prove his worth, to earn his place, let the first champion enter. The arena gates opened, and the first champion emerged. His name was Rax, a weapons master who had trained for 60 years in the art of energy blade combat. He carried 2 curved blades that hummed with power, capable of cutting through steel like paper. The crowd roared. This was entertainment, but also tradition, sacred and violent in equal measure. "Begin!" Kira commanded. Rax moved immediately, his blades flashing in complex patterns designed to overwhelm opponents. He was testing Dae-hyun, seeing how the human would react. Dae-hyun moved backward, dodging each strike by the smallest margin necessary. His enhanced reflexes calculated every angle, every trajectory. He was analyzing Rax's fighting style, learning it the way some people learned languages. After 30 seconds of pure defense, Dae-hyun saw the pattern. Rax favored high attacks, leaving his lower guard slightly open. It was a tiny flaw, barely noticeable, but enough. When Rax committed to another overhead strike, Dae-hyun didn't dodge. He stepped inside the attack, too close for the blade to reach him effectively. His hand shot out and struck Rax's wrist at a precise nerve cluster. The champion's grip loosened for just a fraction of a second. That was all Dae-hyun needed. He took one blade, spun it in his hand, and pressed it against Rax's throat in a move so fast that half the audience didn't see it happen. "Yield," Dae-hyun said quietly. Rax stared in shock. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I yield." The crowd erupted in confused noise. The human had won in less than 4 minutes, with minimal violence. This wasn't how these fights usually went. Valira leaned forward in her throne, her golden eyes wide. She had expected Dae-hyun to win eventually, but not like this. Not with such perfect control. The second champion was already entering. Her name was Vera, and she specialized in grappling. She was twice Dae-hyun's size, with muscles that could bend metal, no weapons, just raw physical strength. "I will break you, human," she announced. "You're welcome to try," Dae-hyun replied calmly. When the fight began, Vara charged like a freight train. Dae-hyun couldn't outmuscle her, so he didn't try. Instead, he used the high gravity against her. When she grabbed for him, he dropped low and redirected her momentum. Her own mass betrayed her, and she stumbled. What followed was a brutal demonstration of technique over strength. Every time Vara tried to grab him, Dae-hyun slipped away or used her force against her. He struck pressure points, targeted joints, made her own body work against itself. The fight lasted 9 minutes, long enough that both combatants were breathing hard. Finally, Dae-hyun managed to get behind Vara and apply a hold that cut off blood flow to her brain. She fought it, her strength incredible, but biology couldn't be denied. "Sleep," Dae-hyun said softly as she lost consciousness. He lowered her gently to the ground and stepped back. Medical teams rushed in to revive Vera. She woke confused, then angry, then grudgingly respectful. She had lost, but the human had fought with honor. 2 victories. 1 more to go. General Thorax entered the arena, and the crowd went completely silent. This was different. This was personal. Everyone knew the general had opposed Dae-hyun from the beginning. This fight would be brutal. Thorax carried a traditional Acheron battle staff, 6 feet of weighted metal that could shatter bones with a single blow. He looked at Dae-hyun with pure determination. "I don't hate you, human," Thorax said as they faced each other. "But I must know the truth. Are you worthy of standing beside our queen?" "Then let's find out," Dae-hyun replied. The fight began, and immediately it was clear this was different from the previous battles. Thorax wasn't testing or probing. He was attacking with the full force of a warrior who had fought in 100 wars. The staff whistled through the air, each strike powerful enough to kill. Dae-hyun dodged, blocked, and redirected, but he couldn't just defend forever. Thorax was too skilled, too experienced. So Dae-hyun changed tactics. He started teaching. Every time he blocked an attack, he explained what Thorax had done wrong. Every time he dodged, he pointed out the opening it created. He was fighting and instructing simultaneously, showing Thorax techniques the general had never encountered. "Your stance is good, but you're telegraphing your high strikes by shifting your weight," Dae-hyun said, ducking under a horizontal swing. Thorax adjusted immediately, impressed despite himself. Better! But now you're overcompensating low, Dae-hyun continued, leaping over a sweep. The fight went on for 30 minutes. Both warriors were bleeding from minor cuts. Both were exhausted. But something strange was happening. Thorax was learning, growing, becoming a better fighter with every exchange. Finally, Dae-hyun saw his opening. He could end this, could strike the finishing blow. Instead, he disarmed Thorax with a move so precise that the general's staff flew across the arena. Then Dae-hyun extended his hand. "You're one of the finest warriors I've ever faced," Dae-hyun said, breathing hard. "It would be an honor to fight alongside you rather than against you." Thorax stared at the offered hand. He could refuse, could demand they continue unarmed. But something in Dae-hyun's eyes stopped him. This human had held back, could have hurt him worse, could have humiliated him, but instead offered respect. Thorax took the hand. "You are worthy, consort Dae-hyun. I was wrong to doubt you." The crowd exploded in approval. Chants of Dae-hyun's name echoed through the arena, a sound that would have seemed impossible just hours before. But the celebration was cut short by alarms, loud, urgent warnings that meant only one thing: attack. Valira stood immediately, receiving reports through her communicator. Her face went hard with anger. "Multiple systems under simultaneous assault. The conspiracy we feared. They're striking now." Dae-hyun ran to her side. "How bad?" "3 of my systems, 2 of Earth's colonies, rogue coalition forces heavily armed." She looked at him. "This is coordinated. This is war." "Then we fight," Dae-hyun said simply. Within an hour, Valira's command ship was in space, surrounded by her fleet. Dae-hyun stood beside her in the war room, along with General Thorax, War Mistress Kira, and Admiral Woo Jin, who had joined them via communication link. "The main attack is focused on the Confluence Gate," Admiral Woo Jin reported. "If they take that hyperspace junction, they can cut the galaxy in half." "We're outnumbered 3-1, Kira said grimly. Everyone looked at the tactical display. The situation seemed hopeless. Standard strategy said to retreat and regroup, but that would mean losing the gate and splitting the galaxy. "I have an idea," Dae-hyun said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Valira nodded. "Speak." "Earth's tactics and Acheron tactics are different. You favor direct assault, overwhelming force. We favor misdirection, using enemy expectations against them." He pointed at the display. "They're expecting us to either attack head-on or retreat. What if we did both?" "Explain," Thorax demanded. Dae-hyun's enhanced mind had already run 1,000 simulations. "We split the fleet. The Acheron forces attack directly, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, Earth's forces use stealth technology to slip through their formation here." He indicated a spot on the map. "We hit their command ships from behind while they're focused on your frontal assault." "Risky," Kira said. "If the timing is off, both forces get destroyed." "Yes," Dae-hyun agreed. "But if we coordinate perfectly, we can turn their numbers against them. Their formation is designed to fight one threat, not 2 coming from different directions." Valira studied the plan. It was bold, unconventional. Exactly the kind of thinking that won wars. "We do it," she decided. "Thorax, you'll command the frontal assault. Dae-hyun, you'll coordinate with Admiral Woo Jin on the stealth approach. Kira, you're with me in reserve, ready to exploit whatever opening they create." The battle for the Confluence Gate was brutal. Valira's forces smashed into the enemy fleet with traditional Acheron ferocity, drawing all attention to themselves. Ships exploded, weapons fired, space became a storm of violence. But while the enemy focused on this obvious threat, Earth's stealth ships slipped through the chaos like ghosts. Admiral Wu Jin's forces struck the enemy command structure with precision strikes that crippled their coordination, and when confusion spread through the enemy ranks, Valira's reserve forces hit them from a third direction, turning confusion into chaos. Dae Hyun coordinated everything from the command ship, his enhanced mind tracking hundreds of variables simultaneously. He was in his element, fighting not with weapons, but with strategy and timing. 3 hours later, the battle was over. The enemy fleet was destroyed or scattered. The confluence gate was secure, but the cost had been high. Ships on both sides were damaged. Lives had been lost. Victory tasted like ash and smoke. In the aftermath, Valira and Dae Hyun stood on the observation deck of her flagship, looking out at the debris field that had been a battle. "We won," Valira said. "Yes," Dae Hyun agreed. "But this was just one battle. The conspiracy goes deeper." "I know. We'll need to work together. Earth and the Acheron Empire, truly allied." She turned to him. "Which means I need my consort to actually be my partner, not just a ceremonial figure." "Is that what you want?" Dae Hyun asked. Valira was quiet for a long moment. "During the Crucible, when Thorax was fighting you, I realized something. I was afraid, not for my empire or my throne. I was afraid you would be hurt, that I would lose you." She met his eyes. "That's not strategic thinking. That's not politics. That's feelings," Dae Hyun finished softly. "I didn't marry an ordinary human," Valira said. "I married someone extraordinary who chose to be humble. And somehow, despite all the lies and secrets, I've fallen for that person." Dae Hyun stepped closer. "I told you I chose you. I meant it. Not as a mission, not as strategy. As the person I want to spend my life with." She reached down with one of her 4 hands and cupped his face. "I don't know how this works. Our species are different. Our cultures are different. You're enhanced, I'm a warrior queen. Everything about this is complicated." "Then we'll figure it out together," he said, "one day at a time." Valira smiled, a real smile that transformed her stern features into something beautiful. "Do you have any other secrets I should know about? Any other impossible abilities?" Dae Hyun thought about it seriously. "Well, I never told you about the time I prevented a black hole collapse at the Academy." "You're joking." "Maybe. Maybe not." His eyes sparkled with humor. "I guess you'll spend your life finding out." She laughed, and the sound was like music. She pulled him close, and for the first time, they embraced not as political figures, but as two people who had found something unexpected and precious. Outside the viewport, Earth and Acheron Prime were both visible among the stars. Two worlds, once separate, now connected by an alliance that had begun as politics and grown into something real. "What happens now?" Dae Hyun asked. "Now we build something new," Valira replied. "An alliance between our peoples, a partnership between us. And we face whatever comes next together." "Together," Dae Hyun agreed. "I like the sound of that." They stood there, holding each other as the fleet reorganized and repairs began. A human and an alien, a warrior and a queen. Two people who had been brought together by political necessity and stayed together by choice. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. Conspiracies lurked in shadows. Enemies would always threaten, but they would face it all together, as equals, as partners, and maybe as something more. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in either of their lives, they faced that uncertainty not alone, but side by side. And that made all the difference.